The laughter echoed across the training compound just before dawn. 79-year-old Samuel Sam Carter slowly pushed a mop bucket across the concrete hallway inside the Naval Special Warfare Training Center in Coronado, California. Wearing faded maintenance overalls instead of a military uniform, he quietly cleaned the floors long before the first SEAL candidates arrived each morning. Most people barely noticed him. A few did. "Careful, Grandpa," one exhausted trainee joked after another brutal night of training. "You're working harder than we are." Another candidate laughed. "He's probably been mopping these floors since Vietnam." More laughter followed. Sam simply smiled, nodded politely, and continued working without saying a word. Every morning he followed the same routine: clean the classrooms, sweep the equipment bay, wipe down the memorial hallway, then sit alone outside with a cup of black coffee before sunrise. To the young trainees, he was just another elderly civilian earning a paycheck. None of them knew why the instructors greeted him by name. None of them noticed that every few days, one particular display case in the memorial hallway always looked more carefully polished than the others. And absolutely none of them understood why the old janitor never walked past the bronze plaque, listing the names of fallen SEALs without quietly stopping for a few seconds. Then everything changed. A convoy of black SUVs rolled through the front gate carrying Rear Admiral Nathan Brooks, the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare. Hundreds of trainees snapped to attention as the Admiral inspected the compound. Halfway through the inspection, he suddenly stopped walking. Without hesitation, the Admiral stepped out of formation, crossed the courtyard toward the old janitor still holding a mop, and came to a perfect salute. "Master Chief Carter," he said loudly enough for the entire training battalion to hear, "it is an honor to see you again, sir." The courtyard fell completely silent. Every instructor immediately saluted. Every officer followed. Hundreds of SEAL candidates stared in disbelief at the elderly janitor standing quietly beside his mop bucket. None of them had any idea they were looking at one of the most legendary combat instructors in the history of Naval Special Warfare. A retired Master Chief whose training methods had shaped generations of SEALs, whose classified missions had never been made public, and whose greatest act of heroism had remained hidden for nearly 40 years. Within the next hour, the trainees would discover why the highest-ranking officer on the base had saluted a janitor before anyone else. Uncover the heartbreaking reason Sam chose to spend his retirement cleaning the same hallways where young SEALs learned to serve, and realize that the greatest warriors are often the ones who no longer need anyone to know who they are. Every morning, at exactly 4:30, long before the bugle sounded, and long before the first SEAL candidates stumbled toward another day of training, Samuel Carter unlocked the maintenance closet inside the Naval Special Warfare Training Center at Coronado, California. At 79 years old, he moved more slowly than he once had. A worn knee brace supported his right leg beneath faded work pants, and arthritis stiffened his hands during the cold coastal mornings. Still, he never missed a shift. He began in the same place every day, the memorial hallway. Before touching a single mop or broom, Sam quietly walked the length of the bronze wall engraved with the names of fallen Navy SEALs. He never hurried. When he reached one particular name, he always paused for a few extra seconds. Then he gently touched the edge of the plaque with 2 fingers before whispering words no one else ever heard. Only after that did he begin cleaning. Most of the young trainees never noticed. Those who did assumed the old janitor simply had strange habits. "Morning, Grandpa," one exhausted candidate called, while dragging himself toward the locker room after another freezing surf drill. Sam smiled warmly. "Morning, son. You sure get here early. Someone has to make sure you don't slip on wet floors." The trainees laughed and continued walking. Sam laughed softly with them. He had learned many years ago that people often reveal more about themselves through jokes than through serious conversation. By 6 o'clock, the compound had come alive. Instructors shouted commands across obstacle courses. Helicopters thundered overhead. Boats slammed against the shoreline during surf training. SEAL candidates sprinted past the maintenance building carrying heavy inflatable rafts on their shoulders. Sam quietly pushed his mop bucket through the corridor, stopping occasionally to move abandoned boots or straighten chairs left carelessly after classroom sessions. He never complained. Lieutenant Commander Ethan Ross watched from the administrative office window. "He's here before all of us," one young instructor remarked. Ross smiled. "Always has been. You know him well?" Ross nodded. "Longer than you've been alive. What's his story?" Ross looked toward the hallway where Sam carefully polished a glass display case filled with photographs of fallen operators. Not mine to tell. A few minutes later, several trainees entered the hallway, still dripping from morning surf exercises. One of them nearly slipped before catching himself against the wall. Good thing the janitor's doing his job. Another joked. Yeah. A third laughed. He probably knows this place better than any SEAL. Sam simply nodded politely as they walked past. Probably, he answered. The trainees laughed without realizing how true the statement actually was. During breakfast break, Sam carried his usual cup of black coffee outside and sat on the same weathered bench overlooking the obstacle course. Every morning he watched the candidates climb ropes, crawl through mud, and struggle over walls. Sometimes they failed. Sometimes they quit. Occasionally they helped each other when instructors weren't looking. Those moments always made him smile the most. A young candidate named Tyler Morgan noticed the old man watching. "What are you smiling at?" Sam pointed toward two exhausted trainees helping a third over the final obstacle. "That," Tyler shrugged. "They're slowing themselves down." Sam quietly shook his head. "No? Then what?" "They're becoming a team." Tyler laughed. "This isn't summer camp, old man." Sam smiled into his coffee. "No, son." His eyes remained fixed on the obstacle course. "It's much more important than that." Before Tyler could answer, a convoy of black SUVs entered the base through the main gate. Military police quickly moved into position while officers hurried toward headquarters. Conversations stopped almost immediately. Someone whispered, "Rear Admiral Brooks is here." Within minutes, instructors ordered every available trainee into formation. Hundreds of SEAL candidates lined the courtyard in perfect rows while senior officers prepared for the inspection. Sam quietly stood, emptied the last of his coffee, and picked up his mop bucket. Rather than leaving, he calmly continued cleaning the edge of the courtyard, as though nothing unusual were happening. Tyler shook his head in disbelief. "Doesn't he know who's coming?" Another trainee laughed. "He's just the janitor." Moments later, Rear Admiral Nathan Brooks stepped from the lead vehicle surrounded by senior officers. The inspection began exactly as everyone expected, until the Admiral suddenly stopped walking. His eyes had fallen on the elderly janitor pushing a mop across the concrete only a few yards away. Without saying a word, the Admiral left the inspection party, walked directly toward Sam Carter, and stopped in front of him. Every trainee watched in confused silence. Sam slowly set the mop aside. The Admiral came to a flawless military salute. His voice echoed across the courtyard. "Master Chief Samuel Carter." He smiled with unmistakable respect. "Welcome home, sir." The entire battalion froze. Every instructor immediately raised a salute. Every officer followed. The trainees who had laughed only moments earlier could do nothing, except stare at the quiet old janitor standing beside a mop bucket, as the highest-ranking officer on the base saluted him before anyone else. The courtyard remained completely silent. Hundreds of SEAL candidates stood frozen in formation, unsure whether they had just witnessed reality or some elaborate test. Rear Admiral Nathan Brooks held his salute until Samuel Carter slowly returned it. The old man's movements were calm, precise, and unmistakably military, despite the faded maintenance uniform he was wearing. "Good morning, Admiral," Sam said quietly. Nathan Brooks smiled warmly. "It's good to see you again, Master Chief." Sam nodded. "You're looking older." Several instructors struggled not to laugh. The Admiral grinned. "Only because you trained me." A ripple of surprise spread through the formation. The commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare had just admitted that the old janitor had once been his instructor. Brooks turned toward the assembled candidates. At ease, no one relaxed. Their eyes remained fixed on Sam. The Admiral noticed. "Gentlemen," he said, "allow me to introduce the man standing beside me." He paused briefly. "Master Chief Samuel Carter, United States Navy. Retired?" Still, most of the younger trainees looked confused. The name meant nothing to them. Brooks smiled faintly. That's exactly how he wanted it. He turned back toward Sam. "May I?" Sam shrugged modestly. "You never asked permission when you were a student." Laughter quietly broke the tension. The Admiral faced the trainees again. 43 years ago, before many of your parents were old enough to drive, Master Chief Carter became one of the first senior enlisted instructors assigned to build the modern close-quarters combat program for Naval Special Warfare. Murmurs spread through the ranks. "Many techniques you are learning today," Brooks continued, "exist because this man spent decades refining them through experience, training, and sacrifice." One trainee whispered, "Why have we never heard of him?" Lieutenant Commander Ethan Ross answered quietly from the side. Because nearly everything he did remained classified. Brooks nodded. Correct. He looked toward Sam. He always believed the mission mattered more than the man. One of the candidates hesitated before raising his hand. Sir, go ahead. If Master Chief Carter was so important, he glanced toward the mop bucket. Why is he cleaning floors? The question hung in the air. Sam smiled before the Admiral could answer. Because somebody has to. A few nervous laughs followed. Brooks looked at Sam for a moment before speaking more seriously. After retiring, Master Chief Carter refused every consulting contract, every television interview, every book deal, and every honorary position the Navy offered him. Why? Another trainee asked. Brooks smiled. Ask him. All eyes turned towards Sam. The old Master Chief rested both hands on the mop handle. When I was 20 years old, he began quietly. I thought wearing the uniform made me important. He paused. Then I met men who never came home. Silence settled across the courtyard. After that, Sam looked toward the memorial hallway behind him. I stopped worrying about whether people knew my name. Brooks nodded respectfully. That's the answer he's given for 30 years. One candidate still looked puzzled. But why work here? Sam turned and pointed toward the bronze memorial wall inside the building. Every name on that wall belongs to someone who once walked these hallways. His voice remained calm. Some of them were my students. The trainees followed his gaze. For the first time, many noticed that one section of the memorial wall gleamed brighter than the rest. You polish it every morning. Tyler Morgan quietly realized. Sam nodded once. Every morning. Brooks slowly stepped beside the old Master Chief. There's something else they should know. Sam sighed softly. Nathan, they deserve to hear it. The Admiral looked back at the trainees. 38 years ago, during a classified operation that remains sealed to this day, Master Chief Carter made a decision that saved 11 SEAL operators. Complete silence returned. He was recommended for the Medal of Honor. Several trainees gasped quietly. Recommended? Brooks nodded. He declined it. Confused whispers spread through the formation. One candidate finally asked, Sir, why would anyone refuse the Medal of Honor? Sam looked down at the worn wooden mop handle before answering. Because 12 men went on that mission. He slowly lifted his eyes. Only 11 came home. No one spoke. No one moved. The old janitor standing beside the mop bucket suddenly seemed much taller than anyone remembered. Brooks gently placed a hand on Sam's shoulder. That's also why he comes here every morning. Sam smiled sadly. To make sure one hallway stays clean. Tyler frowned. Which hallway? Sam looked toward the polished bronze wall once more. The one that leads to the men who never got to walk out of it. The courtyard remained silent. Then, for the very first time that morning, not a single trainee saw an old janitor. They saw a warrior who had spent an entire lifetime honoring those who never returned. Not a single trainee moved after Samuel Carter finished speaking. The morning breeze drifted quietly across the courtyard, carrying only the distant sound of waves breaking against the Coronado shoreline. Rear Admiral Nathan Brooks looked across the silent formation before turning back toward the old Master Chief. Would you do me one favor? Sam smiled. You usually ask for something difficult. Brooks laughed softly. Only because you always say yes. He nodded toward the close quarters combat training building. The instructors are running today's evaluation. Sam immediately shook his head. Nathan, they need to see it. I'm 79. Exactly. Sam looked toward Lieutenant Commander Ethan Ross. Ethan simply smiled. I learned from you. The Admiral folded his arms. Now let them. 20 minutes later, more than 200 SEAL candidates crowded around the combat training mat inside the largest instruction hall on the base. The room fell silent, as Sam slowly walked onto the mat wearing the same faded maintenance boots he had used while cleaning floors only minutes earlier. Across from him stood Chief Petty Officer Logan Pierce, the Academy's senior hand-to-hand combat instructor. At 34 years old, Logan was one of the strongest operators on the base, a veteran of multiple deployments and nearly twice as fast as the elderly Master Chief standing opposite him. Logan respectfully saluted. Permission to begin, Master Chief? Sam returned the salute. Whenever you're ready. The younger trainees watched nervously. Some still couldn't believe what they were seeing. Logan attacked first. Fast. Controlled. Professional. He closed the distance in an instant, reaching for Sam's shoulders exactly as he had practiced thousands of times. Then something happened so quickly that half the room missed it completely. Sam took one quiet step. That was all. Logan suddenly found himself face down on the training mat, with one arm gently locked behind his back. There had been no strike, no display of strength, no dramatic movement, only perfect timing. Sam immediately released the hold and offered his hand. Again, Logan smiled as he stood. "Yes, Master Chief." The second attempt lasted slightly longer. 3 seconds. Logan changed angles, attacked lower, and tried to use speed instead of power. Sam calmly redirected the movement, shifted his own balance by only a few inches, and Logan once again landed harmlessly on the mat. "Again," Sam said quietly. Sweat formed on Logan's forehead. The trainees stared in disbelief. After the fourth attempt, Logan stepped back laughing. "I'm running out of ideas." Sam smiled warmly. "Good. Good?" That's when learning starts. Even the instructors laughed. Rear Admiral Brooks looked toward the candidates. "Do you know what you're watching?" No one answered. Ethan Ross spoke instead. "You're watching someone who stopped trying to win a fight decades ago." Sam nodded. "Winning isn't the mission." One trainee raised his hand. "Then, what is?" Sam looked around the room. "Going home?" Silence settled over the training hall. Sam slowly picked up a blue training knife lying on the mat. "Everything we teach here," he held up the harmless rubber blade, "exists. So someone gets to see their family again." He gently placed the knife back down. "If your ego ever becomes more important than that," he shook his head, "you've already failed." The room remained completely still. Tyler Morgan quietly looked at the old Master Chief. "Sir?" Sam smiled. "Yes? How many fights have you won?" Sam thought for a moment. "Not many." Tyler looked confused. "Really?" "The important ones ended before they started." Brooks quietly smiled. "That's the answer he's given every class for 40 years. Just then, Lieutenant Commander Ross walked to the front, carrying an old wooden display case taken from the command building. He carefully opened it in front of everyone. Inside rested a faded Navy trident, a combat-worn SEAL qualification badge, several campaign ribbons, and one small silver challenge coin unlike any the trainees had ever seen. Across its surface were engraved 12 names arranged in a circle. 11 names were polished from years of being touched. The 12th remained almost untouched in the center. Tyler looked closely. "Who's the name in the middle?" Sam's smile slowly faded. He gently picked up the coin and ran one finger across the center engraving. "My best friend. What happened?" Sam remained silent for several seconds before answering. He made sure the rest of us came home. No one asked another question. Every trainee understood that the story carried more weight than any classified file ever could. They had spent months believing the hardest part of becoming a SEAL was surviving the physical training. Standing before them was a man proving that the hardest part was carrying the memory of those who never made it home. The training hall remained silent long after Samuel Carter placed the silver challenge coin back inside its wooden case. None of the SEAL candidates cared about the combat demonstration anymore. Their attention had shifted entirely to the quiet old man standing before them. Rear Admiral Nathan Brooks gently closed the display case and looked at Sam with quiet respect. "Master Chief," he asked softly, "would you tell them about the 12th name?" Sam lowered his eyes for several moments before answering. "I've spent 38 years trying not to." No one spoke. Finally, Sam looked toward the memorial hallway visible through the open doors of the training building. His name was Daniel Reeves. Several instructors instinctively straightened where they stood. "He wasn't the strongest man on our team," Sam said with a faint smile. "He wasn't the fastest either." One trainee finally asked, "Then what made him special?" Sam answered without hesitation, "He never forgot why we were there." The room became perfectly still. During a classified operation overseas, Sam continued, "Everything that could go wrong did. Our extraction point was compromised. Communications failed. 12 of us suddenly found ourselves surrounded. The trainees listened without moving. We fought our way toward the helicopters," Sam said quietly. "We almost made it." He paused before adding one painful word. "Almost." Tyler Morgan swallowed hard. "What happened?" Sam rested one hand on the wooden display case. Daniel stayed behind. No one breathed. He realized someone had to delay the enemy long enough for the helicopters to land. Sam looked down at the challenge coin again. He volunteered before anyone else could. A heavy silence settled across the hall. "I ordered him to come with us," Sam continued. "He just smiled." Tyler whispered, "What did he say?" Sam looked toward the ceiling, as though hearing his friend's voice once again. He said, "Master Chief, Somebody has to make sure you all get home." The words echoed through the training hall. No one spoke afterward. "None of us argued," Sam said quietly, because deep down, every one of us knew he was right. Rear Admiral Brooks stepped forward. 11 SEALs survived that mission. Sam nodded once. One didn't. He looked back at the young candidate standing before him. "For years, people called me a hero." He gently shook his head. They were talking to the wrong man. One candidate wiped tears from his eyes before asking, "Is that why you refused the Medal of Honor?" Sam nodded. "How could I wear a medal for coming home, when Daniel never had the chance?" The question hung unanswered in the air. Lieutenant Commander Ethan Ross quietly stepped beside the old Master Chief. "I've wanted to ask you something for 20 years. Sam smiled gently. "You're finally brave enough?" A few soft laughs briefly eased the emotion inside the room. Ross nodded. "Every morning, when you stop at the memorial wall, is Daniel's name the one you touch?" Sam looked toward the hallway once more. "Yes. Every single day?" "Every single day?" "Why?" Sam smiled sadly. "Because I'm afraid someday no one else will." Those words settled more heavily than any lesson the candidates had learned during months of training. Rear Admiral Brooks slowly faced the formation. "Gentlemen," he said firmly, "everything you've learned this week about tactics, weapons, endurance, and combat can be forgotten with time. But if you remember what Master Chief Carter just taught you today, you'll understand what being a SEAL actually means." At that moment, the base historian quietly entered, carrying a large framed black and white photograph. He placed it beside Sam. The picture showed 12 young SEAL operators standing shoulder to shoulder decades earlier, every one of them smiling. Several candidates immediately recognized the young Samuel Carter. Then their eyes moved to the man standing beside him. "That's Daniel," Tyler whispered. Sam nodded. "Yes." Tyler looked closer. "He's got his hand on your shoulder." Sam smiled softly. He always did. Beneath the photograph, a faded, handwritten sentence remained perfectly readable despite the passing decades. "No mission is ever completed by the man who returns alone." Sam gently reached out and touched Daniel's smiling face in the photograph. His voice was barely louder than a whisper. "We made it home, brother." For the first time in nearly 40 years, the burden he had carried alone became something an entire room now shared with him. Within days, word of what had happened at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center spread quietly through the SEAL community. There was no official press release, no television interviews, no headlines. The story traveled the way the most respected stories always do, one operator telling another. Young SEALs arriving at Coronado began asking about the elderly janitor who had once trained generations of warriors. Veterans returned to the base simply to shake Samuel Carter's hand. Sam accepted every handshake with the same humble smile before returning to his mop and bucket as though nothing had changed. "You're becoming famous," Lieutenant Commander Ethan Ross joked one morning. Sam chuckled softly. "That's unfortunate." "Why?" "Because famous people stop listening." Ross laughed. "You haven't changed a bit." "I hope not." Every Saturday morning afterward, Sam quietly began sitting inside the close-quarters combat classroom before training started. No schedule announced his sessions. No attendance was required. Yet every seat filled long before sunrise. The trainees expected stories about secret missions, famous operations, and battlefield heroics. Instead, Sam walked to the whiteboard, picked up a marker, and wrote only 3 short sentences. "Skill earns confidence. Character earns trust. Humility earns the right to lead." Then he spent the next 2 hours explaining why the strongest operator in any room should also be the calmest. He almost never discussed combat. Instead, he spoke about responsibility, teamwork, integrity, and the weight carried by those who return home when others do not. One morning, Tyler Morgan raised his hand. "Master Chief." Sam smiled. "Yes? What's the hardest part of becoming a SEAL?" Several candidates leaned forward, expecting an answer about Hell Week or combat deployments. Sam quietly shook his head. "The hardest part begins after you earn the trident." Tyler looked confused. "How?" Sam rested one hand on the instructor's podium because from that day forward, someone younger is always watching how you live. Silence filled the classroom. "Your greatest responsibility isn't becoming exceptional." He looked around the room. "It's helping someone else become even better." Those words gradually became part of the culture at the training center. Instructors repeated them during leadership courses. Graduates wrote them inside notebooks before deployments. Some even carried small cards in their uniform pockets with Sam's 3 sentences printed across the front. A year later, Rear Admiral Nathan Brooks announced that the leadership classroom inside the training compound would be renamed. Sam immediately objected. "Don't put my name on a building." Brooks smiled. "Too late. Nathan, hear me out." The Admiral walked him to the entrance. Above the doorway hung a new bronze plaque, the Samuel Carter Leadership Center. "Sam Sahil, I told you not to." Brooks smiled. "Look closer." Beneath the title appeared another inscription, dedicated to every instructor who quietly shaped warriors without asking for recognition. Sam read the words several times before smiling. Now that, he nodded slowly. "I can accept." Years passed. Sam continued cleaning the memorial hallway every morning without missing a single shift. Every day he paused before Daniel Reeves' name. Every day he gently touched the bronze plaque before beginning his work. When Samuel Carter peacefully passed away at the age of 88, the Naval Special Warfare community gathered from across the country: active duty SEALs, retired operators, Gold Star families, instructors, and young candidates stood shoulder to shoulder in complete silence outside the memorial hallway. Rear Admiral Brooks, now retired himself, stepped forward carrying Sam's old wooden mop instead of placing it in storage. He leaned it carefully against the memorial wall beside Daniel Reeves's name. Next to it rested Sam's faded maintenance badge and the silver challenge coin bearing the names of the 12 men who had served together decades earlier. Beneath them, the Navy installed one final bronze plaque. A warrior is remembered not by the battles he won, but by the people he lifted, the teammates he brought home, and the generations he inspired to serve with honor. Every new SEAL candidate entering the compound afterward walked past that simple display before beginning training. Most believed they were looking at an old mop. The instructors knew better. They were looking at one of the greatest leadership lessons the Navy had ever preserved, because Samuel Carter had spent his final years proving that a mop in the hands of a servant can inspire more warriors than a weapon in the hands of a man seeking glory. True greatness almost never announces itself. It does not ask for applause. It does not demand recognition. More often than not, it quietly goes back to work long after everyone else has stopped paying attention. Samuel Carter understood that better than anyone. After spending a lifetime serving his country in places few people would ever know about, he chose to spend his retirement pushing a mop through the same hallways where the next generation of warriors was learning to serve, not because he had to, because he believed service never truly ends. A uniform may come off, a title may disappear, a career may reach its final day, but character remains long after all of those things are gone. Daniel Reeves also left behind a lesson that could never be taught inside a classroom. He proved that leadership is not standing at the front when everything is safe. Leadership is choosing to stand behind when everyone else needs a chance to come home. Every person who walked out of that mission carried a part of Daniel's sacrifice for the rest of their lives. Through Samuel, that sacrifice continued shaping generations of SEALs who would never know Daniel personally, yet would live by the example he left behind. The young trainees made the same mistake many of us make every day. They judged a person by his clothes instead of his character. They saw a mop and overlooked the hands holding it. They saw age and failed to imagine experience. Then, in a single morning, they discovered that wisdom often dresses in the simplest clothing. The greatest heroes rarely need anyone to know who they are. Their lives speak loudly enough without introductions. Samuel often reminded his students that skill earns confidence, character earns trust, and humility earns the right to lead. Those words apply far beyond military service. They belong in every family, every workplace, every classroom, and every community. Titles may earn authority. Respect must always be earned through the way we treat other people. That lesson never grows old. Perhaps the most powerful moment in this story was not the salute from the Admiral. It was the quiet touch of Samuel's hand against Daniel's name every single morning. Leadership is often measured by the people who remember us after we are gone. Love is measured by how faithfully we continue remembering those who gave everything for us. Every time Samuel paused at that memorial wall, he reminded himself that no achievement, no promotion, and no recognition is ever worth forgetting the people who made our own journey possible. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Have you ever met a veteran, teacher, mentor, coach, or ordinary person whose humility completely changed the way you think about leadership? We'd be honored to hear your story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories about veterans, courage, sacrifice, faith, family, honor, second chances, and the extraordinary people who quietly change the lives of everyone around them. May God bless you and your loved ones. Watch over every service member standing, watch far from home. Comfort every Gold Star family carrying memories of someone they love. Strengthen every leader who chooses humility over pride. And remind all of us that the strongest people are often the ones who never need recognition for what they have done. And may you never forget that sometimes the greatest hero in the room is the quiet old man holding a mop, because he has already spent a lifetime carrying something far heavier,